Hello and welcome to Book Reviews Kill, a podcast about fantasy, sci-fi, and horror novels. I'm Evan.
And I'm Chad.
And you're joining us today for our recap and discussion of The Killing Moon, Book 1 in the Dreamblood Duology by N.K. Jemisin. This was a fairly straightforward story with a lot of fresh ideas thrown in. I really like this.
I'm going to say a lot of old ideas with a fresh twist.
It's new age fun with a vintage feel.
Yeah, yes, exactly. We have like the true name concept, except this one is like your true dream name.
Yeah, and the idea of, taking the dream essence and it's very vital to the whole workings and foundation and economy almost of this whole society.
Certainly their religion.
I want to get this out of the way real quick. And you kind of mentioned this in an episode. Let's just take the joke and we'll put it over here and we'll just leave the joke over here and look at it every now and then. But it kind of reminded me of Monsters, Inc.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
But it wasn't like silly and funny in the way. It was like a really dark, twisted version of Monsters, Inc. But just the idea of dream harvesting, and it's important to how this whole society functions and stuff. And there's corruption within I was like, wait a minute, this is kind of like Monsters.
I've seen this before. Mike Wazowski pops up, is like, oh, that one went wrong. I accidentally launched that child's soul into the forever chaos nightmare land to drift for all time.
It's cool, So we're going to take that, we're going to laugh about it, and we're going to put it over here and then have a real discussion about this book. Because it was really good. I mean, there was no point where I was really that bored with it. I mean, I felt like I was a little distant from the characters.
Yeah, I was never standing during it,
No, I had never really popped up in a bunch of excitement. I think that something that I really enjoyed about this was just, it was a different kind of world and setting for me, a really unique idea in as far as dreams and whatever is going on with the moon. I hope that there's more light shed on that in the next book, because I think we got a little sprinkling of it, but I want to find out what, there's two moons, the phases of the moon seem really important. So it seems like it felt like almost like a big prologue to whatever book 2 is going to be.
I feel the same. It's kind of like laying the groundwork out. But, I will say it was refreshing to have something set in the Egyptian Middle East setting that wasn't wildly complicated like Daevabad. So that was kind of nice. We just kind of seem to be going on the extremes, which is in essence what this tale's all about, right? We have one city-state that's shaped around this magic and then another city-state that is banned it entirely.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting to say the least. So yeah, let's get into the recap and then start the discussion.
Let's do it. The Killing Moon begins as the sun sets. We follow Ahiru, a gatherer for the city-state of Gujare, as he goes about his nightly duties. His job is to help shape the dreams of the citizens of the city and to help dreamers navigate Ina Karek, the dream world. He is able to harvest the magic of the sleeping mind and use it to heal and soothe, and also to kill those judged corrupt. During a routine gathering, the soul of Ahiru's subject is torn apart in the dream realm, doomed to forever haunt a nightmarish land of dreamy chaos. Before the man dies, he gives Ahiru a cryptic message about the brotherhood he serves. As he leaves the residence, Ahiru spots a dark shape on the rooftop of the city streets. Ahiru is traumatized by the events and grows wary of performing the gathering, which provides him with the dream magic he is addicted to and needs to survive. A series of mysterious and horrific murders begin to be uncovered throughout the city as Sunandi, an ambassador from the neighboring city-state of Kisua, navigates the inner circle of the Prince of Gujare. It becomes clear the murders are being committed by a monster possessing abilities that are a twisted perversion of a gatherer's own. Once thought to be merely a myth, a reaper has come to Gujare. Sunandi is imprisoned by the prince, along with one of his generals, and Ahiru and Najiri are ordered to gather her dream blood, essentially a call for assassination. Sunandi manages to convince the pair that the Hatawa is compromised. As Ahiru and Najiri investigate, they begin to find threads linking the monster's appearance to high-ranking members of the priesthood, and perhaps to the prince himself. Afraid for their lives, Ahiru, Najiri, and Sunandi flee the city. Though desperate for Dreamblood, Ahiru manages to stave off killing anyone while traveling, which will turn him into a Reaper, a gatherer that has lost control. They make it to Kisua and warn the leadership that the prince is out of control and bent on war. They succeed in getting the Kisuan army prepared to defend the city. Ahiru and Najiri return to Gujare and track down the prince. They find him doing research on dark magics and creating reapers, hoping to find a way to kill en masse at a great distance. Ahiru manages to save the day by slaying the prince, and then gives up his own life before he becomes the monster he was trying to stop. This alleviates the tension and prevents war between the two city-states. One of the prince's eldest sons manages to escape the city after his father's fall. The book ends with Najiri accepted into the priesthood, determined to help bring reform and guide the change needed for the next generation of gatherers.
All right, lots to work with here with a pretty, just like I said before, straightforward story. I mean, almost straightforward, I think, maybe to a fault.
To a fault, for sure.
Where I definitely
No
was
twists.
like, oh, wow, yeah. I mean, the prince definitely,
He's
yep,
the
that
bad
sounds
guy.
like, I mean, were you...
I totally thought it was him the whole time.
Yeah, because like as soon as there's like a part where there's a festival of sorts on like the shortest day of the year being celebrated, or maybe not even really celebrated. I liked the tone around that festival. Like it seemed kind of like omanous in a way for
a little
some people,
solemn,
but like
yeah.
some people were really into it, but some people weren't. But then Najiri had like turns around and this random guy is like talking to him, and it turns out to be the prince. But the prince is being kind of weird, and then
Yeah, he's all like disguised.
yeah, it's like as soon as I saw the prince kind of like interacting with people, I was like, oh, I don't really know about this guy. I mean,
He's a greaseball.
Yeah, this seems like it's probably that guy. So
Yeah, anybody who continuously brags about the 2 days he can keep his 256 wives pleased is like probably behind closed doors not a great guy.
that's what kind of makes me feel like this was kind of a prologue kind of thing, because I don't know if we were really supposed to be surprised that it was the prince. I think that Najiri and Ahiru were supposed to be surprised, and we were like watching them kind of come to these revelations about this brotherhood that they were a part of, and this really important thing in Najiri's life, especially being raised in a caste of this society that is not really nobles. It's not, nobody really thinks much of him, so he's very attached to all of this. He's very attached to Ahiru. And so it makes a lot of sense that they would be kind of shaken up about all this. But like me as the reader, I was kind of just following along like, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, it makes sense that...
Same. It felt like a very thorough plotting layout of the groundwork for hopefully a thorough shaking of the snow globe, which I hope to see next book. Because this one was just kind of like, cool, now I get the world. I know some history. I know there's a time skip between this book and the next. So I don't know
like 10
exactly...
years.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to get something with the prince's son who escaped. He's going to come back in a big way, I'm sure. Did we ever find out what happened to all the other sons? Did they kill them all?
I don't know. I don't
Like, why is that one escaping?
I think that one's
important?
the really important one, like
Okay.
right next in line. There's a part where the general Nias, I think, notices that the kid is like already pretty formidable. He's kind of got his eye on him. That was a really cool scene when the general kind of showed up, and I thought they were just going to have like a run-of-the-mill, intrigue type conversation, but then, Sundandi is imprisoned, and the general's kind of like, oh my god, this is when I die. Damn it. Like this is all. I thought that was really interesting. The prince definitely, I don't know, what did you think about his whole plot? I mean, was it really as straightforward as he just wanted?
He wanted to live forever and to make the ultimate weapon, like Reaper gun that can destroy souls at a distance and could wipe out the neighboring city states, so he could just expand his control and power. And I think it had something to do with living forever. Like his bloodline is especially long lived, but I think he was trying to live forever sort of thing. And it was very uninspired motivation for a bad guy. Just he wants power and to live forever. Okay.
I mean, I guess it makes sense if you have this sort of power at your disposal, that at some point it would become corrupt. I did think there was a nice, very tasty irony in that, in the sense that, Gujare is very clean. You know what I mean? I think that's a good... It's they're very... there's no corruption. There's no crime.
Yes.
There's no anything. It's this squeaky clean society.
They don't even have doors.
Yeah, but I mean, out of that, sometimes you are liable to get a big bounce back. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, the naivety. I always say this word wrong.
God.
I've said it so wrong. So naivety
Yeah.
Is that right? Naivety? Did I say it right?
Oh, God, I crack up every time you do that.
I know.
So
So I'll
funny.
get it eventually. Naivety of the whole city is kind of abused. I mean, especially Ahiru, right? Because he's like so dogmatically following his religion and the ways of the gatherer that he is really able to be manipulated
When
by
he's like the
the
best
prince.
one. He's the best one. He's the prince's brother, which I thought was
Yeah,
super interesting. And the
that
only
actually was a
reason,
cool twist.
yeah, because the only reason that Ahiru is even still alive is because he's in the Hetawa.
Because the prince killed all of his other brothers, just
Which
casually
should have
threw
been a
that
red
out there.
flag anyway, because he brought it up, and like as soon as the prince was like,
Super
"Well,
early.
you know, sometimes you just gotta like murder everyone in your family to get ahead." And
Yeah,
I was like,
competition,
"Oh, I
just
feel like you're
make 'em into a
probably gonna do
bloodbath."
that again." Yeah, like, like you're probably gonna do something just as bad, if not worse, at some point.
Like I said, I feel like the antagonist was rather uninspired, but I think that you really nailed it when you said this kind of is the prologue for the next book, because I've heard really good things about it and it kind of gets a little more exciting. So I think we just got a very thorough shakedown of this world, the political powers at play, and some of the magic that can be brought to bear, and the corruption of said magic. What did you think about their whole religion? Did you think the magic system was fleshed out well? Because I've read a lot of things. It was like it was so good, and it was, I don't know. There's some mechanics that I question.
I mean, I never stopped thinking it was interesting, for sure.
Yeah, it was unique.
I don't know that it was fleshed out super well, but I don't know if it necessarily like really needed to be for the story. I think that you just really needed to understand that Dreamblood is really important. This essence is really important. It can be abused. I don't think that there's any there weren't any like mechanics of the actual story that like demanded us to know like thoroughly how it's utilized. You know what I mean?
The only one that got me was right at the beginning, which is a major turning point in Hero's character where he fails
like
to reap the
first
souls
chapter.
properly, but he just kind of like fumbles it, and then the soul is
Yeah.
like torn to threads and lost forever. And it was like, how, like, what went wrong? Did he just like miss the ball when he was juggling? I didn't quite get it.
I know that's a funny thing about magic systems too, is that I feel like it really comes down to personal preference, just how much you really want to nerd out about stuff. Because for me as the reader, I'm very okay with just knowing the end result of something. But at the same time, I also don't like magic systems that are like, you just think really hard about it and it works or it doesn't. So there's a very fine line for me. With this, I felt like it was on the positive side of that line, where it was interesting enough in a lot of its aspects that I didn't really mind any vagaries. But if it would have been more fleshed out, that would have been awesome. I mean, I think it has something to do with like they use like a sort of like instrument or like knife, you know? That seems
we saw very few times.
Yeah, it would have
really
been cool
important
to have a scene, and this is just like my nerdiness, and I'm assuming yours as well.
Yeah.
It would have been cool if like when Najiri is like in the Hetawa, like training and doing his like tests and things like that, if we had been given a little bit of like a nice little dump on like exactly how some of this stuff works.
Totally. Just like this device just makes him sleep, I think, but it's also really powerful. I don't know. I did a little research into it, and apparently the magic system is kind of based on Freudian dream theory, which is like dreams are an expression of your subconscious, like your deepest wishes and desires, that sort of thing. Which definitely pans out in this, because like the gatherer would kind of lead the dreamer into their own deepest desires and wishes, and then there was even a sect of them that provided pleasure, like you could go to them and they would pay for you to have a good time in your dreams.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
That's not, it's related to dreams, but it's not so much related to this book. But it's kind of, but I wanted to ask you about it. Okay, so I don't know if anybody that's listening or if you, Chad, have ever read Chuck Klosterman. He's one of my favorite writers. I love him. He writes mostly nonfiction stuff. It's like pop culture critiques and discussions and things like that. But he also has some of his own fiction books. But he has this list of 23 questions that he likes to ask people that he's just met to kind of gauge what kind of person they are.
Okay.
You know?
I picked up Sex, Drugs, and Cocoa Puffs one time and read like a chapter.
He's
an
awesome writer. But this is one of the questions, and this book made me think of it. So the question is, at long last, somebody invents the Dream VCR. This machine allows you to tape an entire evening's worth of your own dreams, which you can then watch at your leisure. However, the inventor of the Dream VCR will only allow you to use this device if you agree to a strange caveat. When you watch your dreams, you must also do so with your family and your closest friends in the same room. They get to watch your dreams along with you. And if you don't agree to this, you can't use the Dream VCR. Would you still use the Dream VCR?
Even with the caveat, I don't think, like, alone, I don't need to see my dreams.
Yeah,
Like,
that's not
they're going to be confusing. I'm going to be like, wow, I did idiotic things. I'm going to have like a weird opinion of myself. I don't need to formulate any basis of my opinion of the world or myself based off of like super, like the definition of non-reality, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting. I mean, because I've definitely had dreams before where I've woken up and I've been like, I wish I could figure out what that was. I mean, I got like a good feeling from it, but like most like the majority of my dreams are like anxiety dreams. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
I'd be like, why can't he run better? He's like running slow.
and so doing it by myself, I feel like would be its own thing. But then doing it with family and friends, like, no, I don't want to. They see enough of me.
And you get way too over analytical. You'd be like, look, there's like meaning. It'd be like reading Lord of the Flies in high school. It'd be like, what does this mean? What does that mean? It's like, man, sometimes maybe your brain was just firing some synapses to try to, decompose after a long day. What would you not?
I don't think I would. I think
Also,
I think
it was a VCR.
I know, right? I think it was written quite a while ago, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think I would. I mean, I'm definitely endlessly curious about it, but at the same time, I don't know. Maybe dreams really are just your brain kind of just clearing out some clutter and doing like kind of like a defrag kind of thing. And I don't know. But I've also heard theories that like that's actually it really is you like dipping into an alternate reality like version
going into
of
the
yourself.
spirit dimension.
Yeah, and
DMT.
like you really are like it. You are actually consciously living through a different experience, and those events are happening in a sort of real time, in an observable real time. But your consciousness, your like kind of latent, like sleeping consciousness, is still on. It's still active in a certain sense, and kind of like tethering you also to like this one. So it's like distorted and weird. But I mean, that is a pretty spacey way to look at dreams. But I mean, the science of dreaming and everything seems to be like really out to lunch for the most part. Like most people don't really seem to know what the hell is going on. So I think like N.K. Jemisin taking these ideas and then kind of applying it in a more real world sense to how a society functions, that's enough for me as far as like the magic system. I mean, she already took that idea and ran with it. And, if it's not super duper specific, it's already interesting enough that it'll carry me through a lot of the book. But yeah, it'd be really
Just
cool.
wanted to know, like,
yeah,
if it's going to rip someone's soul to pieces and leave them
what's going
stranded
on?
forever.
Yeah.
He even said, he was like, yeah, if there's enough of it left to even like be able to wander in the nightmare land forever. I was like, oh, I hope not. Poor guy. I did really like, however, it was a really awesome visual when he was in the dreams. And I kind of wish we got more of that, because we get cool statements and sentences like, with the flick of his mind, he softened the sand grains around his attacker, making it more comfortable. It's just like very cool. You kind of see this flickering, ever changing like dreamscape that he can control and manipulate with his mind, which was a really cool visual for sure.
Yeah. And I feel like it kind of took a back seat to the plot and other aspects of the world building and what the characters were thinking. We only went into the dream space one time at the beginning of the book. So I thought
I was hoping to have some adventures in there.
Yeah, like I thought while reading it would actually have a lot more to do with that state. But I guess maybe Jemisin just didn't really see a way to like incorporate it other than that beginning.
Yeah, I was hoping we'd get like a midnight pathway sort of thing, like we got in Winter Night. Where we went down the pathway of midnights.
Oh, man,
I thought we were going to
that.
get like a dream, like Reaper hunt or something, where you'd hop from person's dreams to the next person's dreams, like hunting for this Reaper who's going out, just like corrupting people's dreams and stealing their dream blood juice.
That would have been cool.
Yeah, right. So tell me what your thoughts are about their whole magic cast as a whole. Obviously they've like religionized it, for lack of a better term, and they say it's a necessary thing that they do, but it also like kind of has corruption and abuse built into the magic system, because it's like highly addictive. They use it too much. They need it to live. They're euphoric. It makes killing people, collecting their dream blood a very pleasurable experience, which like obviously,
or at least it makes not doing it a painful experience.
Right.
So,
but I mean, when they filled up with, as long as he made the soul go peacefully, I think, then they would like get that in. But the one guy who was ripped, he was like left with his like madness juice.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of just a good example of things work out until they don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's good as you know, and it's changed my view on certain like utopias, or like what I would consider a utopia, or what different authors have considered utopias. I don't really like the idea of that.
Right. Do you think
paper,
it was peaceful from fear?
I don't know. And if it was, that's not great. That's not a good system.
That's not great.
It's eventually not going to work out. The intention, right? I mean, when I was reading it, and it's like, well, you know, we've been able to completely eradicate crime, and it's like, well, yeah, I mean, that's good, but like, how are you doing it? You know,
Right.
like what is the mechanism where you're? I mean, because if you have a society where, you know, everybody's chained to a couch and being fed through a tube, then yeah, I mean, you're not going to have any crime. Yeah, like obviously, you know, but like, how is that happening exactly? You know,
Right.
like, what systems are in place that are maintaining that, and are those systems corruptible? And most of the time, in every story I've ever read, and in most societies I've read about,
yes.
yeah, it's a big giant yes. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
we didn't really get to see too much into the like. Does Hunanji, I think was the name of the like moon mother. Does she Hananji, something like that? Does she use like anyone who is having thoughts of crime? Does she like gathered and like take their soul? I don't know if I got that sense, but for some reason they have no crime.
I mean, it really brings up the question, like, you know, which was addressed even in like inheritance. It gets addressed all the time, but it's like, you know, when you've got a sort of police force, if you want to call it that, in this book, like, who is policing the police? You know, like who is looking for the corruption? Where are the checks and balances here? You know, and it's just a matter of time, I feel like, before a prince comes up and is like, well, I mean, while everybody's kind of chilling, I'm going to go ahead
reap.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I mean, I think this book is a very good look at those questions. And I mean, Jemisin, much like she did with the Broken Earth trilogy, it's like some pretty heavy points here and some topics you can really dig into, while also telling a pretty engaging story. Like I said, the only thing I wasn't super engaged with was the characters. I mean, I felt like the revelation that this brotherhood, you know, the foundation of their entire way of living is very corrupted. It just felt like it kind of bounced off of Najiri, and he was more focused on just kind of following Ahiru everywhere.
Najiri didn't become a gatherer because he was into gathering. He was into Ahiru.
Maybe we should talk about that.
Him.
Maybe we should
let's do that.
Maybe we should address the underage elephant in the room here. Because
elephant in the room. No, Ahiru was like treating him like, you're my little brother, or like a son sort of thing, and Najiri was like, I'm super in love with you, and it was like a little.
I was not awkward. A big fan of this relationship. I think I know what Jemisin was going for here, but it was just creepy. Najiri is like 15 or 16, and Ahiru is like definitely in his 40s.
Pretty old, like 40s.
It was weird. It's not super heavy-handed or anything. Like, they never get physical with each other or anything. Like, Najiri like
it's more just a motivational force for Najiri.
And I think, you know, you could chalk it up to a certain kind of like hazy confusion on Najiri's part, being so young, but it's kind of implied that Ahiru understands and to a certain extent reciprocates those feelings. So it's just odd. Like, the whole the vibe is weird with that one.
The vibe was weird. Yeah, and I'm not sure why every like celebrated ancient elite sect decides that it's a solid plan to have their practitioners be celibate. Like, that can't go wrong. We don't have a bunch of like angsty, magic, powerful, like I'm just gonna take over the world, you know?
Yeah, totally. I mean,
that's not a recipe for reapers.
Well, I don't know though. The prince definitely wasn't celibate, and
that's true.
Wanted
and
to
he
do
reaped.
That. So yeah, he reaped his ass off. But yeah, I don't know. I think it was a good motivation, I guess, for Najiri. It was interesting that he was so kind of all over the place, but I think him being kind of all over the place, I didn't feel very like close to the character, and I just didn't really care about how they felt about anything, because they didn't really seem to care that much about how they felt about anything, and it was just that was definitely the only part of the book that I felt kind of lukewarm on, because the world building, the magic system, the setting, the plot, even though I've kind of seen the plot was great.
Mm-hmm.
This it was just like the characters. I felt pretty distant from them. I hope that in the next book we get to kind of really dig in a little bit more. You know.
Same. Tell me your thoughts about Tsunandi, because I kind of felt like her character or her arc, if you could even call it that, could have been removed entirely from the story, and it wouldn't have
Hmm.
changed like anything.
I never really felt that way with Tsunandi. I mean, again, I mean, just more would have been cool.
Yeah,
She seemed like a really promising character in the first chapter she was in with the prince. I thought there was some really cool dialogue going on there, and
there was.
I was very curious in what was going on. I don't know. I feel like she's pretty important in the sense that she kind of rounds out the story, being from a different city state and being from a different area, and kind of having a unique view on all of this stuff. And they have a place to go because of her. She's not. If it wasn't for her, it would just be Najiri and Nahiru, part of the Hetawa against the prince.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
you're
It would have
right.
been.
And
It would have felt a little too blocky. You know.
totally. And they did have that kind of cool like moral battle with between Tsunandi and Ahiru and Nijiri, where they're like, where she's like, is morality a universal thing, since Ahiru and Nijiri believe that they're doing good, while she's like, yeah, you guys are just like vultures, like murdering out there. So there was like some cultural, okay, yeah, her existence did provide the vehicle for some cool like conversations there, I
I think
guess,
she was pretty
between the two
important.
extremes.
I thought
She just
honestly,
didn't do much.
no, but I mean, she was definitely I mean, she was more interesting than a hero for sure, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
and
Like
and
Najiri was kind of interesting,
Najiri.
kind of interesting.
I don't know.
To sometimes again, like Najiri's first chapter, training and going through this like testing process and stuff. I was so into it.
The first
Even
chapters were great.
yeah, and then I feel like a hero and Najiri kind of like blended into one character almost. I
Yeah.
don't know. It was odd. Yeah, and I felt like the ending. I liked the ending, but it was very like abrupt. It was nice,
Anticlimactic.
but it was poetic in a sense too.
Yeah, like I said, just a little uninspired. It was like, okay, a hero sacrifices himself before he becomes the thing that he was afraid when he was chasing the whole book. But I didn't really get that either. Like, okay, so he's afraid to do any more gatherings, so he's just not going to do it and then die and like potentially become a reaper and then have to sacrifice himself. It's like maybe just like get some dream juice a little bit. He's the best one ever, and then he just like fails one time and loses all ability to do it, and then sets himself on a path of downward spiral because he can't produce his own dream blood.
I don't know. It kind of makes sense that he'd be that traumatized by it if it's something that
Yes.
like it really seemed to rattle him. I mean, it was
Yeah,
pretty
but
clear.
people can donate their nightmares and their like daydreams and stuff to this other sect that can heal. It's like, why couldn't like Najiri be like, here, let me? Oh, he doesn't dream. Someone else, donate some dream to him.
Because
I don't know.
Najiri
There
would
seems like
definitely
there should
do
be
it.
mechanisms for getting him juiced up without him potentially
Um,
reaping out.
I don't know. I mean, it felt like to me when I was reading it, like he had to be the one that did it.
Yeah, I mean, like you said,
It was
a
the only
little-
one that would have been able to. I mean, the jury's not really like trained up enough, and nobody else was really like believed what was going on.
Okay, how many gatherers are there? Because I thought there was a lot, and then I kind of thought there was only two, and now I'm confused.
So there's like Rebene. So it seems like there's two other like for lack of a better word, like apprentices, like on the same level as Najiri, that are like his
Okay.
friends, but not really. And then there seem to be kind of like these more like studied, like higher up gatherers.
Okay,
And
because there was a conversation between like the high priest at one point when Ahiru goes AWOL at first, and they send Najiri to go track him down. That they're like, man, if Ahiru goes away and dies, then we just have like one really inexperienced gatherer. And it was like, wait, I thought there was like a bunch of them, but I guess there's pretty few, pretty scarce.
I mean, I don't think that it doesn't seem like it's a thing that a lot of people are able to do. And a hero being the best one, I can see how it would kind of like set everybody like in the Hetua, kind of like, whoa, this is bad. Like this is the only. It'd be like Sully from Monsters Inc. not being able to scare people anymore. Like,
Yeah, he lost his
okay,
touch.
that's the last one. Okay.
That's the last one. No, it shall not be. I would like to see more of what part the gatherers play in their society, because it seems like there's not very many of them. They collect the souls of the damned or whatever. They'll pass on their goddess's judgment, but I don't really know what part it has in their day-to-day life. Like it seems like it was a lot and a core feature of their entire society, but I don't really know like what they're doing. Like, yeah, they can heal and soothe once with the collected dream blood, but that was really the other group of them.
Yeah. I think
I
that
don't really know.
I mean, it stands to reason that a city with quite a few people in it, if you're trying to keep it basically 100% crime and corruption free, these gatherers would be working overtime.
Okay, so you
Like the
think they
work,
were like taking out criminals?
it's corruption is what they're
Corruption.
calling
Okay,
it. Yeah. So I mean, obviously, those could be considered the same thing, but I don't think
sure.
like it seems like there isn't crime because it's pretty clearly understood. Like like
Yeah,
what's going on here, you know
and they
uh,
specifically didn't have doors, so the gatherers could come in and take your dream self if you were deemed worthy.
it'd be
I like how the
so
one
wild to be dreaming and then like some guy comes in and just
pops
like,
in.
all
Hey,
right, it's time to go.
time has come. Yeah, that whole visualization of in the dreams, their control of the dream, him like detaching from his own self to drop into the other person's dream, all of that was like very cool visualization. I really hope during this next book that we see kind of a lot more use of the awesomeness that we got laid out for us in this book. Like I feel like all the ingredients are here for a really tasty, zesty, delicious meal. We just got the ingredients really well explained to us this book.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious on like what you think is going to happen in the next one, because like the way that this ended, it seemed like everything was pretty much all right, and they were just looking to kind of reform things. But then on the back of the book, or at least somewhere I read, seems like there's quite a big time jump into the next one. So like, what do you think is going on?
Okay, I think the prince's runaway son, who's been gathering power, is going to continue gathering his power, and he's going to return to the city full-bodied and able to wield some like massive dream power, maybe even having perfected his father's like Reaper evil magic or something. Najiri is going to have a love interest in this next book, I think, who's going to be some like person from Kisua who's super anti-dreaming, but he kind of like
Huh.
through getting with Najiri, he like shows him that like it's not our extreme of no dreams and it's not your extreme of all dreams, that it's some path in the middle is the best way, and they're also going to be into each other.
Yeah, that's interesting. I had an idea that they were kind of like maybe overcorrecting, and that might be where a lot of the conflict comes from in the next book. I could be totally wrong about that, but it seems like a society that's this used to a certain way of doing things, if it was found out that there was a lot of corruption, there'd be a lot of blowback. Honestly, like it'd be really difficult to recover from that. Even if you, as a society, agreed that this is the best route forward, like there's a lot of different things that need to happen now.
Totally.
That's what really got me excited for the next book is the note that we left off on this one. It's weird. I've never been more excited, actually, now that I think about it, to read the sequel when the first one had been buttoned up so well.
Yeah,
You know what I
because it
mean?
was very
Like,
complete.
yeah, I mean, there was like the guy.
We have an
The
escaped prince.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
the only loose end, really.
But I wonder how like Kisua is going to react to this, or take control of it, even.
Right.
Because it seemed like they're really directly involved to a certain extent. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like this book, the next one, seems to have more potential for more conflict, and this one seemed like more of just kind of like a cataloging and introduction to the world. So
Totally.
I'm excited because like this is a duology, so maybe the structure is just something that we're not like super used to seeing all the time in fantasy series. Because typically, at least in a trilogy, you have like a pretty like banger first book.
Yeah.
And then like obviously the second book can sometimes be a little bit of a letdown, depending on the series and depending on what's going on.
Right.
But
I think we
with
just
the
got
duology, I
the
don't know.
second book in this book.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe the first part of this book was the first book, and then, like the second part.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, this is gonna definitely. I'm interested to see what happens in this next book. It's only like another like 80 pages longer too.
Yeah, and
a little bit longer.
I think she released them very quick in the timeline of our world with each other. Like I think they were like a month or two separate or something.
I think that she was releasing these while she was releasing the Broken Earth books.
Oh, really?
Cranking stuff out. So I'm gonna ask one more question, and then we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up, and then probably go read the second book and get on this. I'm not gonna ask you if you think it's justifiable, because it's a weird question, and I think we both have similar answers to it. But would you want to live in a society that was basically crime free, but corrupt at its core? So like, I guess a better way to put it is like, effectively, you are basically never in danger and all of your needs are met. But you knew, kind of like with that short story we read, the ones who walk away from Omelas. You know what I mean? Like, but some part of you knew that there was quite a bit of corruption and maybe even like exploitation to a certain extent. But everybody was fine. You know what I mean? Like for the most part, like 99% of the population was like totally had all their needs met. Everybody was cool. Like, is that the kind of society that you think that like morally you could be a part of?
No, simply because, I mean, like the status quo was pretty all right. It's not like they had a ton of freedoms reduced. They weren't living,
Yeah.
super but if they stepped out of line, they were going to get harvested pretty quick. So it was like, I don't know. I don't want to live in a society that is so controlling my future path that I have to constantly walk on eggshells thinking that I'm going to have be murdered in my sleep and have the rest of the city be totally okay with it. In fact, it'll be an honor, So I don't know. I tend to gravitate towards more like freedom, even though that may bring about more crime.
It's really interesting because it's like you can be altruistic to a fault almost, like, or like
Right.
altruistic to a point, but then it's like where I feel like the context of what everybody's like day to day is, and like how much better, how much of an improvement it would be over another different kind of a potential society. You know what I mean? That's a
Right.
really deep, like difficult question to answer, and that's
Totally.
why when we made an episode for the ones who walk away from Omelas, we ended up deleting it because
we don't know anything about
it's
this.
really, it's a super tough question to answer because like on its surface, obviously, if everybody seems like they're being taken care of,
right,
that's
and everyone
good. That's a good
agrees.
thing. Yeah,
they have the same religion. So should there be a separation of church and state? It's like, yes, it's very dogmatic and strict, but everyone agrees that it should be so. So it's like
working.
But I mean, any society that just is a general statement that leans more towards going with the flow and accepting the status quo and rejects any like new ideas extremely is one that is just kind of inherently in its core stunted. It's never going to grow past a certain point because it's dogmatic.
And like authoritarianism, no matter how much it's working, will always work against progress. You know what I mean? Like, or at least in my opinion, it will. I mean, like, because maintaining the context of when that authority came into power is super important. So, but I mean, but it is, I don't know. Cause I mean, obviously I know the answer to it, I feel like, but like this idea of like everybody in a society having their needs met and everything, or at least the vast majority, right? At the expense, I don't know, like it looks okay, but like,
and like this is a weird example, but if we change it just a little bit to be like, let's say everybody's Christian, like, would you be okay with living in like a Christian controlled world where if you step out of line, it's like death, but you already believe in everything that religion stands for, and so it's like, yeah, you'd go with it, but like, should you?
No, because I feel like that rigidity would cancel out the reason why it was a decent.
I agree.
You know what I mean? Like that.
Totally.
The fact, the mere fact that you wouldn't be able to stray away from it. You know what I mean? And I feel like even in this book, there's like this sense. There's something about like the especially during that festival, there was like this weird feeling that I was getting that like not everybody was really happy with this situation.
Right. Ominous was the right word.
Yeah,
you said it earlier. It was ominous. Yeah. Also, I looked up the differences between release dates, and it was May 2012 for The Killing Moon, and then June 7th, so a month later for The Shadowed Sun.
Oh, geez. Yeah. So she just this was probably just one big book, and the publisher
whipped
was
it
like,
out.
You guys
cut that right in half.
All right, I think that's going to do it for us today, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. We've got another one coming next week for The Shadowed Sun. This is great. Yeah, I mean, like I said, the story was a little bit predictable, and I felt a little distant from the characters, but the world building, the magic system, like the really unique ideas and the questions that I was able to ask myself and ask Chad, of course, were more than made up for any like distance or hollowness I might have felt at any point.
And with the exception of possibly Najiri, I don't think these are the characters we're meant to latch onto because everyone like died and like was used. I think they're used up and moved on. With the exception of Najiri, we'll get some more of him next book. But I think that we're gonna be introduced to some real, hopefully latch-onable characters next book.
I'm looking forward to seeing how different, if it is different, how different the next book is from this, and seeing kind of like looking at this duology as a whole for sure.
I've never been so like semi like stoked and excited. Not to say it was bad. It was just didn't get my goat going, didn't get my gears turning. But yet I'm so looking forward to reading this next book and seeing where the story goes. Because say one thing for Jemisin, she can put words together.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. Hope you have an awesome rest of your day, and of course, happy reading.
Bye, everybody.